To start off editing a page, we need to hook up this link so we can click it and then go through to an edit page, passing in the page that we want to edit, grab that data and insert it into the form ready to be modified. So it sounds a little bit more complicated than it actually is, but let's start out with this link. So remember, over on our list.php page, we have this edit link just here. We can go ahead and insert a URL here to redirect the user to that edit page. So what we want to do then is pretty much exactly the same thing we did for the slug, where we generated the URL and we passed in the slug here, but we're going to be passing in the ID this time. So let's echo out the base URL as always, and let's go to admin edit.php, and then what we want to do is we want to specify an ID in the query string. So let's go and echo out page ID, and again we will escape that. So now we can click this, we go through to edit.php with an ID of 3 for this record here, for this one ID of 1, for this one ID of 2. So what we can now do then is create our edit page. So under admin, we create a new file. We call this edit.php. And we do the same as we've done before. We require app start.php, and we go ahead and we output our view as well. So while we're here, let's go ahead and create that view. That's edit.php. So we're going to say edit page. So under edit, we require in our view root, and then we say admin edit.php, and then we see that view. Brilliant. So the next thing to do then is to actually check if we have that ID in the query string, and go ahead and pull that record from the database, passing in the ID so we only get that one record. So instead, we're going to take a little bit of a different approach, and we're going to check if the ID isn't there. So we're going to use isSet, and we're going to say if it's not set, get, because remember we're pulling it from the query string, and then ID. So all that's saying is if this ID doesn't exist in the query string, we want to go ahead and redirect the user off somewhere. So we're going to redirect them to base URL, and then we're going to append on admin list.php, and then we're just going to kill the page. So all we're doing here is if they land on this page with no ID, it just takes you straight back to the list. Otherwise, we hang around on this page waiting for the next thing. So down here then, we're going to grab the page. So it's the same as before, but we're going to prepare this statement, because remember we're passing in user data here, that ID. And we're going to select the ID, title, label, body, and slug, or you could just do select star if you really wanted to, from pages where the ID equals ID. So we have another placeholder here. We can go ahead and execute that, passing in ID, and we can pass in $_get ID in there, and then that will give us our page. So we just need to fetch it now. So we do exactly as we've done before, PDO fetch associative array. So if we do var dump on page, we should see now that particular page, so third page, second page, and first page. So let's go ahead and edit the first page then. So all we want to do now then is we have this page variable, and this will automatically be available in our edit view. So we just need to build up our form. To save a little bit of time, we can copy and paste the add form that we created, because all we need is the same form. We just need to output the existing values into these inputs. So I'm going to copy this entire page here and I'm going to put it into edit. I'm going to change this to edit page. We're going to change the action on the form to edit. We don't want to submit this back through to add. And that is pretty much it. I suppose we can change the submit button as well. So now, when we edit a page, we end up with this. All we need to do is fill in this data. We need to somehow specify which ID that we're updating inside of the form. So when we post it back to edit, we have that data available and we can update on a specific ID. But let's tackle the outputting of the initial values first of all. So all we're going to do for this is create a value attribute which will populate that text input with whatever you enter in here. And what we will enter in here is the post. Remember that we grabbed in this query just here, or the page rather. I'm going to go ahead and output title. And we're going to remember, as always, to escape that value. So now we see this. This is the first page because we're grabbing the first record, pulling that from the database, and we can output it in here. So let's do the same thing for label. We can just change that to label. We'll do the same thing for slug. And our text area is slightly different. We don't have a value attribute here. So what we want to do is instead echo page body. We still want to escape this, like so. And we end up with the following. So we've got all the information that we need. The last thing to do is create a hidden input field down here. And that will allow us to output the ID. When we submit the form, we'll have that available in our post superglobal, ready to edit our page only where the ID equals this ID. So we have an input of type hidden, so this isn't shown to the user. We can give this a name of ID, so we know how to pick that up in our post superglobal. And then we give this a value, and the value is basically just the page ID. And again, we can escape that. It's not necessarily as much of a risk, but we'll escape it anyway. So we don't see that ID, but if we view the page source, we can see ID 1. If this were to change to 2, we see 2. And again, if this were to change to 3, we see 3 just there. Okay, so now that that's done, when we hit edit, what happens? Well, it doesn't really do anything. We're not going through and checking if the form exists. In fact, what is happening is it's taking us back through and then redirecting us back to list.php. So we need to handle this over here. And we're going to do that at the very top here. So we want to check in the same way that we check when we were adding, if the post superglobal array is not empty. Now we want to pull in the ID, label, title, slug, and body that have been submitted again. So we say ID, and we assign post ID to that. And we can duplicate this down and grab the label. We can grab the title. We can grab the slug here. And last but not least, the body. And I'm going to tidy this up just by indenting it, like so. So now we need a prepared statement again, because remember, we're going to be passing this information into a query. So we're going to prepare a statement, and we're going to update the data this time. So we're going to update page. So it's a prepared statement. Again, we'll pull this down so it's a little bit more readable. So we're going to update the table pages. We're going to set, and I'm just going to tab in here so it's a little bit more readable, label equal to a label placeholder. We have a comma here, and again we can duplicate this down. We want to update title to title. We want to update slug to slug. body to a body placeholder, and then finally updated, which is our column in our database, remember, that signifies if something has been updated or not, to now. So that's going to just update that date for us, so then we'll have that updated date available. And last but not least, we can't forget our where clause, because this query alone will update all records. We want to only do it where the ID equals the ID that we specified, which remember is coming through from this hidden input just down here. So now that we've done that, we can execute our query, passing in all the data up here. So let's say update page, execute, and we pass in this array again. So the ID is the ID that we get from up here. And we have the same deal as before, where we just list out everything we need. So we've got our label there. We've got our title, body, and also the slug as well. Doesn't matter which order that you specify this in. So once that has been updated, we're going to redirect the user again back to list.php under our admin section. So we're going to use our base URL, admin list.php. So just to recap, we have our form here to edit, which is going through to edit.php. We're outputting the initial data that we get from this query here. What we then do is include the ID in the form, so we know which record to update. And when that form is submitted, this is now true because the post superglobal won't be empty. We grab our data, we create our prepared statement, we execute with the data that has come from our form, and we redirect the user. And this part updates the record. So this is the first page, or the first page. We'll go ahead and update this very slightly. So we'll add an exclamation mark. We will change the body. This is the first page. Hope you like it. And let's hit edit. And there we go. We can already see that the title has been updated with the exclamation mark. When we click through, we can see that we get the new body and obviously the new title. And you can see that we get last updated and that last updated date. And you can obviously refresh in your database client and you can see that that information has indeed been updated. So that is how easy it is to go ahead and edit our pages. Not very complicated at all. All that we have left to do now is to go ahead and delete any pages that we don't want in our CMS.